Pretty much.
The joys of being a dad.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. Uh, yeah, you
How was your Christmas?
don't get much sleep. Very low key. It was just us because we couldn't really gather up with the other rest of the family because of like I don't know the other kids had like stomach flus, all this kind of stuff. So we couldn't take a baby in there.
Yeah,
So
no,
we were
definitely
just,
not.
and that's without the pandemic and all that stuff. So it was low key for us. What about you?
Same. All of Brit's family are not near us, and then all of mine are definitely not near us.
Yeah, you're in
So,
the same spot to us, pretty much. Yeah.
yep, there wasn't a lot to do, which is nice. I'm here for a low-key Christmas, to be honest.
Yeah.
Nothing too major. Yeah, all good, all good.
All right, let me just bring up a couple of things here before we crack on.
Yeah, you go for it. I tell you what, I did enjoy 70 degrees on Christmas Day and
Jesus.
sweating my balls off walking the dog today on the 27th of December.
God, your weather is so weird there. It really is.
It was, it's going to be, so it's going to be 46 or something like that on New Year's Day or the day after New Year's Day. And it's 70 this week. And then it's going to be back down into the 40s next week. And it's like, this is why I can't get rid of my cough or my cold.
God, yeah.
It's brutal.
Yeah, that doesn't help either.
Not at all.
Where are we at? Okay, so I'm just bringing up all the stat pages so they're in front of me at the same time. Sorry, I'm running a little bit late here.
No, you crack on.
All right. Yeah, and I know because we're going to have to do a couple of these. I figured we could do this one a little bit shorter anyway, right? Because we've got to do so many frequent ones.
Yes, yeah, we're going to have to, right? Like you said, we've got Chelsea in 2 days' time, and we've also got Everton 3 days after that. If everything goes ahead as intended, so we're going to be smashing through the 150s. This is episode 155. For those of you listening, this is Josh. I'm joined by Adam. Craig is not able to make it today as he is back home in the UK and was at the game. So
he was one of the 5 people there.
Yes, the 5 loud people there.
The 5 very loud people. It's better noise than when we have the quote unquote 31,000 every week or whatever they claim.
Yeah, that was going to be my start off point. Really, is that we seem to have solved the crowd issues that we've had in the past and people have talked about. It seems that simply ensuring that just the Withdean crowd are there turns out to be a better atmosphere than the full 30.
Yeah, it was. You could hear it too. You could hear it over the pond, as they say, on the TV. And despite your protestations to the announcing crew, they still tried to claim that the stadium looked empty, despite not having the context of the fact that we hosted a game at a shitty time on Boxing Day and then essentially didn't provide any transportation to a ground that is, at the best of times, challenging to get to.
Yeah. When you've got a stadium transportation system that is built on the foundations of public transport, and then deciding to stuff a game on Boxing Day at 8 p.m., it was never going to end up very well.
No.
I know a lot of people on Twitter were wondering why there was so many Brentford there when Brighton didn't have as many. If I could introduce you to the idea of a coach and what those do, there was a vast majority of those were travel coaches. And fair play, like that's probably what you'd be seeing at Chelsea in a couple of days' time as well, if that works out and it actually goes ahead. Because I've already had a couple be called off already before we've even got close to Tuesday, Wednesday kickoffs. There was a fair few changes in the squad again. I think we're going to be seeing that a lot in the coming weeks with COVID and everything else going on. Some of the notables, Neil Maupay was back, which is absolutely lovely to have him back in the team. We had Adam Webster back, fit and ready to go. Danny Welbeck returned to the bench, which was a big one as well.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that definitely a little bit in the future. No Hayden Roberts, though. Seems that he went down with COVID, so we really were on our last legs at centre-half as well. And Alexis McAllister as well made that starting 11, which people have been clamouring for quite some time.
Started out a bit rough as well for him, didn't it? You were messaging during the game, like, "Oh God, this is why we haven't seen him." But then some touches of class came in for him, and we assume. Maybe you mentioned this. I'm still sleep deprived with a 3-week-old baby here for people listening. But yeah, Duffy had his suspension and then is presumably COVID related injury, something.
I assume the same. There's no way he would have been out of the squad entirely with Ed Turns on the bench if he was available.
Right. You assume he started despite the fact that his last game out without Lewis Dunk was Celtic-esque. But again, if I see Dan, I know we'll get into this, but I keep getting confused when people were saying that maybe you think he had a good game. People thought Dan Burn had a good game. I don't want to see Dan Burn in central defence if I can avoid it. I want to get everyone back fit so Dan Burn is 4th choice or 5th choice. He's a liability. I tell you what he is good for. It's weirdly tracking back every now and then with his big old legs and pulling off an incredible slide tackle. That's his niche, and it's a very specific niche. And detracts from some otherwise pretty horrible positioning play, in my opinion. But we won.
We did, and we scored a goal outside, 2 goals outside of the box. Enoch on the door in the chat points that out, and it was kind of funny, wasn't it? It's something that we've been trying to score goals with regularity for the last 11 games and making a right mess of it. And then score 2 worldies in the space of 6 minutes to steal our first win in 12.
And look, obviously Andy Naylor doesn't listen to 2/3 idiots talking about Brighton on a weekly basis, but he came out with an article earlier this week talking about how don't worry about the quote-unquote striker woes. Let's take a long, hard look at our midfield and the lack of goals that the midfield is scoring. And for people that listen to this podcast on a weekly basis or frequent basis, know that we've been talking about that for a long time at this point, how our midfield do not contribute. And this was Enoch Onwepu's best game in a Brighton shirt for me. One could argue that screamer against Liverpool and the performance there maybe have done it, but this was his from start to finish. He was very, very good. That ball that he scored, that he played through for the first goal and Trossard's take was amazing. So I know we didn't necessarily get a goal from the midfielders today, but we got direct play and the people taking shots. And that's what you get with Mwepu and McAllister when they're in the team, beyond some of the other players that we would normally put in there that want to pass around the outside of the box and eventually Mope shanks it into the stand.
Yeah, I saw an African football great tweet. I don't know if you saw it. I retweeted it from the podcast account. Mwepu is known by Zambian fans for a pass called the Ninkumona, which means I have seen you. They say he doesn't need to look at you to accurately pass the ball to you, and they believe that was his famous Ninkumona yesterday. And I'll tell you, that was some pass. You can call it whatever you want if you keep doing that.
Yeah, it was. God, I don't know what was better. I don't know what was better, the pass or Trossard's just audacity to take that first time and just lob the keeper. Helped by a Brentford line that were way too high up. They had no right being where they were. Just left a horrible gap. But I think that was the difference for me. I think if we don't have Mwepu playing there, it wasn't the world's best pass. It was still fantastic. It's just the fact he did it, and we don't see that enough from this side. If that was Lallana, for example, and I rate him, he probably would have just passed it sideways to someone who would have gone down the left or right wing and put a cross into nothing. We actually played a direct ball. Think about that, and we scored.
Yep, and Trossard made the run, and Trossard has been making those runs for weeks and weeks. He's more than capable of it, as is Mope, obviously, because the second goal came from a couple of different runs like that from him in the first place. Talking about Brentford a little bit, they were very lucky yesterday in that they had only one COVID-related problem. That was Rico Henry. And Fernandez, obviously, in goal is not their first choice, but that's nothing to do with COVID. That's Raya being out long term. For the most part, though, they had their entire full squad out there. I thought they looked incredibly ordinary yesterday. They definitely piled on the pressure early on, which I think came in conjunction with McAllister playing quite poorly. I think that the pressing was a struggle for him massively, and as the game became more and more, we got it by the grip of by the throat. He was able to grow into it a fair bit, but I think that you can see why this team started well in the league, and now they're very much a mixed bag. Their style of play is going to be a style that's going to really hurt some teams, and some teams are going to be able to game plan it so quickly and take over from there. I think they're still going to be okay. I think there's definitely 3 worse teams than them this season. But I do worry about them getting the second season syndrome, like Bielsa's genius.
They were... What was compelling and probably contradictory to the point that I'm going to make, stats-wise, really similar to our game. And in some areas, they were better. Like, they had a higher XG than us.
Yeah.
We had an XG of 0.79 and we scored 2 goals. Think about that. Hell is currently freezing over based on Brighton outperforming XG. Theirs was 0.86. First half to forget for them. They were just abject. And I think when we say sides are average nowadays, we give average too much credit. They were poor in the first half. They were poor. And they got back into it in the second half. The difference between our performance there and Brentford coming at us was that they didn't really have the quality, it felt like, to put the ball in the back of the net. If we play a side a little bit better than them there, I could see us conceding 1 or 2 in that second half, especially if it wasn't for Sanchez pulling off some just mental saves. And Cucurella's clearance off the line that beat Dan Burns 18 feet. But Brentford, there are worse sides than Brentford in the league, but they didn't look very good, despite what the stats say.
Yeah, they didn't. They looked, like you said, Sanchez pulled off a couple of world-class saves, but again, one of those was a deflection. Yeah. So it wasn't from their quality, it was from a lucky deflection, which I feel like last season would have gone in. But he was very quick to react to that. That was outrageous. And then went ahead and made that great save about 4 touches later and smashed himself off the post, which worried me a little bit.
Yeah.
I thought his shoulder had popped for a second there.
Another game of a bit of sort of Jekyll and Hyde with Sanchez, too. A couple of dodgy distributions every now and then. But he's such an asset. I think this is who he is. I think we found ourselves a keeper who is capable of the absolute insane when it comes to reflex saves. His ability to get down low is incredible. The fact that he can use his legs that we saw as well, incredible. And we're just going to have to deal with the fact that sometimes your heart's in your mouth when he passes the ball out every now and then.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on the distribution. Some of it was a bit wild. I will say I thought he looked incredibly comfortable collecting balls from crosses yesterday compared to the last couple of weeks.
He did.
He'd been scary, hasn't he, the last couple of weeks we've talked about it. But yesterday he just looked easy peasy, looked super calm and collected.
Here's one. In around the 67th minute, he came out and did a bit of a Superman punch. And that's the clearance off the line from Cucurella. He shouldn't have done that. I know it's easy to say that in hindsight, but that was a moment where if Cucurella wasn't Cucurella, they score and we go, Sanchez, what the hell are you doing? So, the Sanchez giveth and he taketh away.
Yeah, very much so. The midfield, no Bissouma. He's usually one of the first names on the team sheet. Getting a win without him is obviously a big achievement these days, especially given that we're winless in 11. So to be able to go and take that win and a much needed home win, which is something we've been struggling for as well, without Bissouma. If you assume he's coming back into the side against Chelsea, because he wasn't injury related, it was just a yellow card suspension for anybody who'd forgot, because I had yesterday. Who do you drop for him after a performance like that?
Well, it's tough, right? Because in the chat is also saying Lallana had a pretty good game, especially given that he was playing in a role that was a bit deeper than probably he'd want to play.
It was almost like a bit of a Bissouma role.
It was a bit anchoring. I thought Moda felt like a bit more like Poland Moda yesterday, which is good to see. We've already talked about how that was arguably Mwepu's best game. I don't know who he comes in for, but again, this is a nice problem to have. And we say this because a couple of days ago, it was announced that he's been called up after a 3-year absence to the Mali team. Now, it seems like the AFCON's going to go ahead. We don't know the status necessarily of what his future punishment may be for alleged incidents that happened in nightclubs. We have to deal with potential absence from him in a number of games in the near term. So I'd say for now, you could arguably say that maybe McAllister drops out or Moda drops out for the next game, that we might just do rotation because we have such a heavy fixture list. I could see that happening, but this is great. We're going to have to think about how we deal with switching in and out based on his absence.
Yeah, and I think that's the right answer as well. I think that there isn't really much of a, oh, sorry, you're bound to be left out because he's coming in. It's a case of you played 90 minutes 2 days ago. Looking at Adam Lallana and McAllister, who played 84 minutes, and Wepu, who played the full 90, and Moda played the full 90. You know, two of you can swap out if they wanted to for Solly March and Bissouma or something like that. So I think that's probably the obvious call. No Joel Veltman in the squad either. Looks like that injury got prior to Christmas, maybe a bit more of a lingerer, which is a pain. But overall, the squad looks a lot healthier than it did a couple of weeks ago. Returning Danny Welbeck and a returning Steven Alzate, the lesser spotted Steven Alzate.
Yeah,
that was a nice return. That's a utility midfielder that we haven't had for a while, and I think we can greatly benefit from his return.
Massively, because he is capable of not just being further up the pitch and being a central attacking midfielder, which we are inundated with. He can sit a little bit further back. So when you need to rest Adam Lallana's aged and busted up legs in fixture lists like this, we can give him a reprieve and bring in Steven Alzate. Great to see him back in the team, because it felt like for a period of time, despite the injuries, it felt like he fell out of favor. Just, I don't know whether it was attitude, whatever it was, but he wasn't in Potter's good graces. So good to see him back, either through desperation or through him turning a corner. I'm most excited about Danny Welbeck. Danny Welbeck's return, we've talked about this a fair amount. He looked very classy yesterday. Some of the touches, you're just like, oh, wow, did this guy used to play for Man United or Arsenal? Yeah, maybe he did. Especially when he came over to the left side, he gives you something that we otherwise don't really have. And some of the interplay that happened between him and Cucurella, especially, but also Moda was involved a little bit too. Those two make a very, very, very interesting left side of the pitch, where we can do things that we've not seen this club ever be able to do in terms of quality and touching and one-touch passing.
It's a bit crazy, isn't it, that we're talking about this game yesterday and how well we played and some of the intricate passing and some of the exciting passages of play, and we've not mentioned Tariq Lamptey's name yet.
Probably the most anonymous player on the pitch, honestly.
Yeah, he actually had one of the least sets amount of touches in the game, barring the subs, of course. He was not super active at all. Only Robert Sanchez had less. He didn't do a great deal, but the threat he provides enables us to do what we do on that left-hand side, because they can't gang up, because if that switch ball is on, just look at the first goal. We brought it in from the right-hand side and Wepu just tore them apart. It seems like the Cucurella Lamptey wing issues are not going to be a problem even at 4 at the back. We played 4 at the back yesterday, something I know you've been wanting to see for a while, and it worked really well. Obviously, we were perfectly happy going wide to the fullbacks if needed. Like you say, Moda was very much in right behind Trossard and Mope, and looked a lot better for it, and got that great little assist as well.
Yes, it was a nice little play. He looked a little classy yesterday as well, where he's been stumbling a little bit the last few games.
Yeah, I thought so as well. I thought he played really well.
There was one part in the game. I think it was around the 60-something minute, 64th minute, where Lamptey did. My most vivid memory was he cut inside and he just sprinted 40, 50 yards down the middle of the pitch. I would like to see that a lot more. I think you get afforded some of that opportunity by playing more of a sort of a 4-5-1, 4-4-2, because it's not so stacked up in the center. You have players that are pushed a little bit more out, and he can drive through. He's good at that. He's not just, I know it's easy when you get a pacey player like him to say, I want you to stand 5 centimeters off the edge of the touchline and just run up and down it. But I'd love to see him cut in more, because it then allows our forward players to drift out a little bit more, and we just create little situations that otherwise we don't see.
Yeah, and he's so fast. It just seems like a waste not to let him do whatever he wants really on that right hand side. And I think with age will come intelligence as well. He's still only 21. And he spent so much time out. It's crazy to think he's only 21 and he spent over almost a year out from the football altogether because of that hamstring surgery. Mental.
Have we talked? I'm not sure if we covered this on a previous episode at this point, but we talked about the Ashworth stuff with Newcastle, because it's worth just bringing back quickly here.
We've not. That all broke between this episode and last.
Right.
That's not been. We haven't even touched on that yet.
I wonder
remember
whether
the last episode was
got to me.
just under 10 days ago. December 18th was the last one. So we have not talked Ashworth to Newcastle yet.
We can go into it in more depth, but I do want to bring up the fact that it is absolute murder that we've gotten away with by getting Lamptey and Cucurella. Cucurella had a release clause in his contract, right? So arguably any half decent side that looked appealing to him could have come in, paid the money, and taken him. He is outstanding, truly an incredible player that we arguably shouldn't have. And then on the other side, we plucked Tarek Lamptey away for pennies,
with no buyback, unlike Livramento.
So we need to get into the Ashworth conversation at some point. Maybe it's more appropriate for a January transfer, because it might turn out to be nothing. But he is a very important part to this club based on what you're seeing on the pitch right now.
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to be something we'll talk about. We'll probably pencil that in for the FA Cup weekend, where there'll be a little less chat and more transfer stuff.
Yeah.
What does this club look like with or without Ashworth? He may well have already been gone by then. If he is, what does that look like afterwards? Do we replace him? Do we think we have, what does it look like in terms of people inside the club following that model? I don't know. It's an interesting one. And it's kind of almost a total 180 degree turn on the head for Newcastle, because the first couple of months of this Saudi ownership seems to have been an utter disaster. And just clearly not football people doing football things. And Ashworth would be a monumental step into the right direction for them if they actually want to build this club up to be something special, blood money or not. That would be a heck of an appointment for them.
Yeah, it would be. I don't know if I'm him though. Do you take that job? I mean, yes, you've got all this. You've got all the wealth that comes with it, but you are now, and I know I keep saying I think they'll stay up. You are facing down at a season in the Championship minimum. And we know, even if you throw a lot of money at this, it's no small feat to just go straight back up the next year. You can get trapped in that division. Does he want that? Because his transfer policy and the players he's looking at and what he's going to go for, he basically has to create 2 separate playbooks, one for this season and the Championship, and then he's got to get rid and clear it out again, and then get them prepped for come back into the Premiership and not doing the same thing that they've just done and go back straight back down. So I don't know. He's got a good thing here.
You've also got Eddie Howe, who has been on record before wanting much more power behind his decisions. He basically had the free run of the world at Bournemouth, and that's what he wants.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that he's going to be super keen on having to lay back and take everything that Ash was going to come in with, which was part of the reason we went for Potter, right? Like that was part of the allure of he is head coach. That's literally his name. Like he's a head coach, not a manager. And his coaching ability is unbelievable. And he puts together a list of things he wants, attributes he wants, traits he wants, and Ashworth and everybody else, Winstanley and his his lad Kyle Macaulay, someone like that, whoever it is that he brought in with him. I suspect they all just put their heads together and come up with this football manager list and just go ahead and knock it out. And to me, that doesn't feel like something Eddie Howe would want to do, as someone who doesn't know Eddie Howe at all. But judging his Bournemouth ways, the way he's been before, it seems like it's going to be something that's going to be tough for him. He didn't go to Celtic because they had a director of football. And it was a huge problem for him.
The fact that Ashworth's name even been circulated at the moment, though, is you would assume that maybe that conversation's been had, and Howe doesn't just walk into whomever's office it is. I can't remember the lady who's in private equity who's currently running Newcastle for some reason, and goes, what the hell are you doing? But who knows? And I think we can obviously unanimously, for the most part, say that we would not want to see that move happen. But it's money that will talk, and it's whether he wants to carve a different kind of legacy for himself, because that is a job where he could probably double his salary. He gets this ridiculous war chest that he can suddenly then bring Newcastle back to the upper echelons of the Premier League. Is that more appealing than his life on the South Coast and making Brighton a top 10 team?
And that's the other bit, right? And this is something that Newcastle are probably going to be a permanent talking point from here on out, as long as the Albion are in the Premier League, because they're a team that we directly competed with and are slowly not going to compete with anymore as they go further and further up that stupid money chain. And it's something that I've been saying from the beginning, and I know you guys have also been alluding to it too. Is he going to want to move to Newcastle? Newcastle isn't a shithole. I'm not saying it's like a third world country, but from Brighton, with the job Ashworth does, his family could still be in London, going to whatever schools they want, doing whatever they want in the capital. You're not going to be having that same ability to do that up 3 hours northeast. You know what I mean? Like that's some players we're going to have issues with that. Like before we even talk about Ashworth, like I've been saying the same since the Saudis took over. There's going to be some players that are not going to want to move up there.
Correct. And that's why always the London clubs have that advantage when it comes to signing players. If everything is equal, players will look to the London lifestyle above living even in a Manchester. The weather's objectively worse in places further out, and often Newcastle's a fair chunk further northeast. That is a factor. And I don't think Cucurella goes and plays for Newcastle. There's a nice Spanish community in Brighton. There's a good setup there. You can get home easier. London fight. Yeah.
And that's the thing, right? And I think that's part of the Albion's allure as well. I have no doubt in my mind that whoever it is picking up these players from Gatwick or Heathrow or whatever are immediately pointing out how quick the trip will be to Brighton.
Yeah.
Because it's a huge selling point. You get to go to the holiday house and then you get to go back up to London if you ever want to, and it's a quick one.
Having had to do a lot of work travel fairly often from my tenure in Brighton. Yes, and that is appealing.
Yeah. And if you're a footballer with the speed that they drive, even quicker.
True. Yes. God, at least they're not as bad as the drivers in the NFL here, but that's a horrible topic for another time.
Well, yeah. I've got to be careful with that one because I was going to say some stuff that might get me in trouble just with just incredibly dark jokes. Players themselves. We've already touched on a couple of them. Marc Cucurella was unbelievable yesterday. I thought he was just superb. He had the most touches by a country mile yesterday. I don't know if you've seen that on the stat sheet. He had 102 touches of the ball. Next most was Lallana at 72.
Shows how much and that speaks to the Lamptey thing, right? We just focused a lot of play down the left side.
Yep. We saw something there, and we went after it. I'm not sure if that was the replacement for Rico Henry on that side. I'm not sure which side he plays on. But no,
it was Canos was right back, wasn't he? And Baptiste was sort of playing on that side, I think.
Dirty player, Carlos, isn't he? He's a bit knock-art for me. I imagine that Brentford fans love him, but he's such an arsehole.
Tony got a little
player.
bit petulant as well, didn't he, at one point?
Yeah. There was a couple of bookings there, and they were lucky not to get more. There was a couple of... Well, Canos outright dived. Not so sure Tony did, which kind of offset itself to get... One of them didn't get a booking when the other one should have. And then you had the knee to the back of the header that was just outrageous as well. Yeah, it was a strange one. They were seemingly getting more and more petulant as the game went on, for sure.
Well, speaking of penalties, and I know we're pinballing around, but we had a bit of a penalty shout as well. The VAR didn't really take too much of an interest in. Was it Lamptey in the box that got a crossover and got pushed in the back? And they just sort of went, no, don't worry about it. But there was definite hands there.
Yep. And that's why, and it was one of the things I was going to bring up, and then we got pinballed again. That's why I love Lamptey cutting in so much.
Yeah.
Because he's a penalty machine if he gets in that box, because people just go in so heavily on him to try and stop him. It's the same as Adama Traore without a tenth of the strength. So it goes over easier simply because of the speed he's moving at. And that's a penalty all day, every day, whether you like it or not. And that one, like you said, there's going to be a lot of 50-50s with him. Every time he cuts in, if someone tries to take that ball off of him, there are other days that gets given as a penalty.
Yeah, I completely agree. But as we know, the standard and consistency of refereeing in the Premier League leaves something to be desired. But yeah, that's a different conversation.
Funnily enough, we had a refereeing swap, didn't we? Right before the game, for some reason. We went from Madley to England, I think. And I actually think he had a pretty good game. It seemed VAR took the entire day off.
Yeah, you didn't see it once.
It was so strange how quiet they were, but I thought the ref himself managed the game rather well. I thought he wasn't... It was almost a lot of it, you forgot he was there. And I think that also speaks to the fact that both of us like to play free-flowing football, so there's not a lot of needs to stop it. But I didn't see anything too wild.
I agree, but there's also the other conspiracy theory aspect there. Let's see how the refereeing goes at Chelsea.
Yeah, well,
because
we know how that's going to go.
Yeah, I think Brighton and Brentford, they're like, whatever, just do what you want.
Yeah. I feel like there's a couple of those fouls on the edge of the box that we got that were absolutely fouls that may well be nodded away if Kante or Jorginho make those same tackles in 2 days' time. Yeah,
I know we're going to get on to talking about this game, but we absolutely should, just because I'm scared about it. But I do want to go back to we said this, and this is blindingly obvious statement to make, but this was a really, really important win. As we've talked about a lot, this was a long time. This was just 3 months without tasting victory. That is a very, very long time, and we find ourselves in 9th place. We had to stop that slide down the table, because even just for people listening to this show, we become unbearable because we'll start talking about watching the relegation zone and what happens there. No one wants to have these conversations. Let's get the win in. Let's start talking now about, okay, well, let's start to solidify ourselves around this sort of 10th to 14th kind of area. That's where we want to be for now.
Let's talk relegation very quickly, though. 4 more wins should do it. I know we've only got 5 out of 17, but 4 more wins.
How many more draws is that? What is that? 12? 12 draws. That's more obtainable.
12 draws or 4 more wins. Both of them are attainable. You know, we still have the entire bottom group to play: Leeds, Watford, Burnley, Newcastle, Norwich. Vital. I know you just said it, but it was so important, because once you get past this game, you've got Chelsea after this. That's not going to be likely anything. And then you've got Everton right after that at Goodison, which we are notoriously bad at. And then we've got that week at the FA Cup, and then we've got frigging Palace coming to visit, who could have could have piled onto our 15th winless game in a row at that point. And as I said last week, no team has ever stayed up after hitting that mark. Thankfully, we don't have to worry about that hanging over our heads. Man of the match
toughens up. Man, well, like I said, I thought it was Mwepu's best game with Brighton shirt. So it'd be a shame not to give it to him. But there are a few contenders. But I'll give it to him just because up until this point, we've seen flashes. We've seen him play well for the first 20 minutes of the game. We've seen him score a wacky goal. We've seen him do X, Y, and Z. But there's always then been a but. And I don't really think there was necessarily that yesterday. And this is, God, it makes you feel good because we invested a lot of money in him. He's going to be important to this team. And it's imperative that he doesn't need to be world class, but he needs to be a success. And we saw that yesterday.
Yep. I agree with you. Mwepu for me all day. Dan Burn got Sky Sports his man of the match. Wild. I'm not sure what happened there.
And this goes back to what I said earlier, because who tweeted this out? I think Richie Mills tweeted out that Dan Burn was given man of the match. And I said, by who? Dan Burn's mum. Because I didn't see it. Maybe I'm missing something.
He wasn't even in my top 5. If I had to put a top 5 out there, Sanchez is in it, Cucurella's in it, Mope's in it, Trossard's in it for the obvious reasons. 2 goal scorers, excellent saves, and the focal point at left back.
Yeah, and you could even say, well, maybe there might even be more. Yeah, there might be more.
Yeah, I mean, Moda, great assist. Lallana, superb.
Webster was pretty good too.
Yeah, it's that's what I mean. And although I do say that, I'm just looking at these players now just for a bit of. Again, I know that we've still got a fair few games to go before we can even talk about being for sure safe because wild things can happen, as we've just seen, 11 winless. But just to put out there, Enoch Mwepu, Cucurella, Sanchez, Mope, Trossard, they would be kind of that like top 5, right? 23 years old, 24, 25, and Leandro Trossard is the old man at 27.
He's 27. I didn't even know he was 27. I thought he was... God, I guess he's been. It's nice that we got him for these sort of prime years for now, at least. I'll add one other thing here because it touches on what we talked about a bit before. I know Brighton fans. I know we want to think about this, but yesterday gave you a glimpse of what's possible in life after Yves Bissouma, because he's not going to stay here probably. He's not going to stay here for the rest of his career. He might not even stay here for the next 12 months. We can still be a good side. Those other players just need to know what they're doing. They need to know their roles and they need to step up and do what they need to. Mwepu did that yesterday. Moda did that yesterday. Lallana did that yesterday. And in part, McAllister did that yesterday. That's a good sign.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's spot on. There was a lot of worry for me yesterday without him. And we looked really, really comfortable without him. There was not a huge amount of time where you ever thought we would look a lot more solid with him. And I'm not sure if that's also a testament to the fact that Brentford weren't very good.
Little column A, little column B. But they just kept, 2 wins in the last 5. I know against a weird declining Everton and a free win against Watford. But it's still a team and they showed that they had the chances to be in that game yesterday. So it wasn't a pushover. We didn't play Norwich. Although, to be honest, that was worse, wasn't it?
I thought we played really well I think, sitting back totally destroyed their chances of making anything happen too. I hate the sitting back. But when we played a team like Brentford, not a team like Chelsea or Liverpool that can just wipe you out regardless, their most dangerous moments all came on the break. And once we went 2-0 up, there were no breaks. And they became a lot less dangerous after that.
And that's the big thing, isn't it? How many times have we talked about how we're so susceptible to counterattacks? And yes, there are fewer counterattacks when you had the ball in the net at the other end because you don't need to push all of your players up desperately trying to score. Let's hopefully maybe be able to score again before the other team in subsequent games because that helps us out in a big way.
Yeah. Next up, because I don't want to keep you too long because we're into football being on now. Next up, Chelsea in 2 days' time, because this is being recorded on the 27th of December. Happy birthday, Mum. It's my mum's birthday.
Oh, there you go. Happy birthday, Josh's mum.
And yeah, Chelsea in 2 days' time. Another big one. Thomas Tuchel just came out recently and is banging on about the 5 substitutions rule again. I am definitely on his side in that I don't know how this hasn't been voted on again since last Christmas. Blown away as to why that's not happened. The Premier League need to pull their finger out and get that vote put through again and see what happens this time. I suspect you may well get the 14-team majority at this point. I think we're well overdue for it. But we are at Stamford Bridge. It's going to be very, very tough. I know they say they've got plenty of people out with COVID, but that lineup 2 days ago or yesterday was perfectly fine. What are we hoping for here? I almost feel like the way Chelsea play and the way Tuchel plays is almost harder for us to go against than Liverpool or Man City.
Correct. You're hoping to not get embarrassed. There's 3 sides you don't want to play in this league, and they're one of them. The only blessing that you had recently was that they'd been in this bit of a slump. But then they realized they've got £100 million striker that they can bring in. They'd been out a little bit with injuries and whatnot, and he changed the face of that game yesterday against Villa. Lukaku's starting is likely and terrifies me. But you're right. What we hate to see is a side that is very defensively solid, that can build out and then can have that pace that can get behind us, especially when we push up if we're going to need to try and get a goal. They have that. They have that in droves. It's going to be tough. It will be a tough game. But we've done these types of things before. We're draw merchants. We can do this. We got the win out the way, so we don't need to come into this just all absolutely furious and saying, well, we have to win, because if not, then we haven't won for X, Y, and Z. It's okay. It's okay.
Yep, 100% agree. The difference Boxing Day makes is huge. I would feel a lot more antsy about this if we hadn't just won. They are going to rotate, so you are going to see some players not starting.
Can I pause you just 1 second?
Yeah.
Because while we're recording this, the Man U Newcastle game's gone on, and San Maximan has just put Newcastle in front, it would seem. So, about that.
It's going to be an interesting
Tony,
game.
get Ashworth on the line.
Yep, it's going to be an interesting... that's good. They've scored so early. That means it'll be an interesting, fun game to watch now when I go downstairs. So I'm here for it. I expect we'll see Lukaku start, like you said. I think we'll see a couple of other changes in the squad. You'll probably see Kovacic come in, Ziyech as well, Azpilicueta definitely. You may see a couple of the other midfielders come in. That Saul or whatever his name is that was on the bench.
I hope Saul comes in, because he's been crap. So,
well, notable drops I expect to see. I expect to see Kante probably come off. Simply because he's played a lot of football in the last
he was
weeks.
subbed off last time. I think they were a little concerned about his hammy. I can't even remember what they came out and said, but that would be great if he didn't appear. And
one last thing, because I've not seen anything since, because I didn't really go online after the game yesterday. Was there anything said about Trossard being subbed off at halftime? Was that a case of give him 45 minutes and he can play a full game at Chelsea fully fit? Or was that he got something come up and now we're having to be safe?
I'm almost certainly what I just said about Kante. I'm pretty sure that exact same statement was said by Naylor afterwards, that it was cautionary, that he felt a little tightness in his hamstring and they pulled him off for half time. So I think that was it. That was it.
Good.
Someone did just tweet out saying Aaron Connolly has unfollowed Brighton and followed Middlesbrough on his Instagram account. Is this happening? Do we need to put the sirens out? Aaron Connolly are now saying on the Borough Breakdown podcast, Aaron Connolly to Borough confirmed. So while we're live, there might be some breaking news that star striker Aaron Connolly, maybe finally on his way out, thankfully, to be a pain and a pest somewhere else.
Irish starlet
Yeah.
seeks exit is a headline I'm here for. Whether it's a loan or a permanent, we've said this numerous times. I've seen enough of Aaron Connolly. He could be better than he is, but the attitude problem, that's a tough thing to fix.
Yes.
And if you can't fix it in the environment the Albion have cultivated, then I've got even bigger question marks over you. Because this is a very forward-thinking, progressive club that obviously takes mental health seriously and all that stuff more than every other Premier League club has. They were first on the frontier on all of these things that are supposed to make your life as a footballer happier, safe spaces, blah 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 blah. And if he's still a massive arsehole here,
I think he just might be a knob. I think he's just a knob, isn't he? So yeah,
I'm here for it. All right, well, we will go. We'll be back in like 2 days. I'm gonna publish this as soon as I've exported it and got it off. So I'll be tweeting this out tonight that it's out and about. iTunes may be a little bit later on because Apple are shite. So we'll just see what happens there. Spotify, by the end of the Newcastle game, you can listen to this. So yeah, we will see you all in a couple of days' time for the Chelsea game. Probably not going to be as happy as this one, but as Adam said, as long as we don't embarrass ourselves, I think we've come away with that pretty well, and no injuries.
Yeah, let's see what happens. Happy Christmas or whatever anyone follows and celebrates. Go do your thing, and yeah, we'll see you in a couple of days after Chelsea hopefully don't run us ragged.
Yeah. All right, boys. Bye.
Cheers.